You guys, I'll tell you, we're going to wake up this morning. Everybody stand up for a moment. All right? Really. And I want you to take a deep breath, right? And just let it out. Don't go to sleep on me. Okay? Because I'm excited about what I want to share with you. And I know not everybody is here. So we have an option. Either you stay awake with me or I have you stand the whole service. You can sit. I'm laughing, but, we were just talking about this in Sunday school that, there are some Sundays that you come, you can feel the energy. Scripture, please. Oh, there are my voices. And we're going to read the scriptures that are printed in your bulletin, starting with the 4th chapter of Mark. It says this: Then Jesus said, God's kingdom is like a seed thrown on a field by a man, who then goes to bed and forgets about it. The seed sprouts and grows, and he has no idea how it happens. The earth does it all without his help. First a green stem of grass, then a bud, then the ripened grain. When the grain is fully formed, he reaps harvest time. How can we picture God's kingdom? What kind of story can we use? It's like a pine nut. When it lands on the ground, it is quite small as seeds go. Yet once it is planted, it grows into a huge pine tree with thick branches. Eagles nest in it. With many stories like these, he presented his message to them, fitting the stories to their experience and their maturity. He was never without a story when he spoke. When he was alone with his disciples, he went over everything, sorting out the tangles, untying the knots. And then we'll go to the part in 2 Corinthians. It says, that's why we live in such good cheer. You won't see us drooping our heads or dragging our feet. Cramped conditions here don't get us down. They only remind us of the spacious living conditions ahead. And that's what we trust in but don't yet see that keeps us going. Do you suppose a few nuts in the road or rocks in the path are going to stop us? When the time comes, we'll be plenty ready to exchange exile for homecoming. But neither exile nor homecoming is the main thing. Cheerfully pleasing God is the main thing. And that's what we aim to do, regardless of our conditions. Sooner or later, we'll all have to face God, regardless of our conditions. We will appear before Christ and take what's coming to us as a result of our actions, either good or bad. That keeps us vigilant. You can be sure it's no light thing to know that we're all one day will stand in that one place of judgment. That's why we work urgently with everyone we meet to get them ready to face God. God alone knows how well we do this, but I hope you realize how much and deeply we care. We're not saying this to make ourselves look good to you. We just thought it would make you feel good, proud even, that we're on your side and not just nice in your face as so many people are. If I acted crazy, I did it for God. If I acted overly serious, I did it for you. Christ's love has moved me to such extremes. His love has the first and last word in everything we do. Our firm decision is to work from this focused center. One man died for everyone. That puts everyone in the same boat. He included everyone in his death so that everyone could also be included in his life, a resurrection life, a far better life than people ever lived on their own. And we can stop there. This past week, I was talking to somebody about church, because, that's what I do for a living. and we were talking about it, and the way the question was asked was basically a question that I think a lot of people ask, and I brought this up in Sunday school this morning, but basically, these people are asking, sell me on Christianity. Sell me on this thing called faith. Tell me why it should take up some time in my life. Why should this be important? So then I found myself asking the question, okay, what is it about church? Why is church so important? Why are we trying to do this vision and understand what we are supposed to be about? Why is the church worth doing? Why is the church worth saving? So that's kind of where I want to go today. And I'm going to tie in these verses about the jobs we have. But all of our stories start somewhere. So when we share our faith with people, we all have a starting point. So I can say, okay, well, how do I start answering the question, why do we go to church? Why is church important? Why it should be a priority for you? Because all of us are a little different. You know, we all come from different points of view. We all come from different sexual identities. You know, I cannot read the Bible as a female. Females cannot read the Bible from a male perspective. I cannot read the Bible from a poor African American perspective. I can only read the Bible from a white middle class upbringing, right? And one that had abuse and one that had a lot of things. And I'm going to stand behind the pulpit because but we all come from these different starting points. And we can't divorce our theologies from our life. So a couple weeks ago, I shared with you where I came from, why I believe what I believe in, where I'm starting from. So we all have those points, and they're all different. So when we want to tell somebody why church is important, we have to remember that my story may not be somebody else's story. So I started to ask myself, well, if we can't really start from the same starting point because we have different perspectives and we've grown up differently and we come from different socioeconomic stances and ethnic stances and all of these things, what do I start? Where do we go from here? What do I want to do as a vision for the church? Why, after 21 years of doing this, do I still think it's worth doing and important in a way that we connect to other people, to God, and to the church? Because I think that amidst the brokenness, both the corporate brokenness that we feel within our church, not just Oakland, but within our denominations, within the church as a whole, within the personal brokenness of our own lives, and all of these things, it is worth doing, worth saving, because beyond all of those things, beyond the fights, the rhetoric, the theological differences, the denominational differences, and the messes that we have made it, we are all part of an ancient story. We are all part of something that connects us, just like we were reading in the Gospel of Mark. And if you continue to read in that chapter, it talks about once the growing seed, then it goes into the parable of the mustard seed, and it talks about all of these little things that we don't see with our eyes. We think it's just little, it's not going to make a difference. But in those parables grew to something big, and it was overtaken. But for me, I am starting to understand that we are part of something that is generations old. Now, to me, that is appetizing. To be part of something that is so old. Before even people began to understand, before people wrote words down, all of these things, there was this message that said, we are to be connected to something beyond ourselves. Even if we don't understand what it is, even if we have all of these questions and we're not sure what to do, we know that we are supposed to be connected to something beyond ourselves and to each other, to these beliefs and these understandings. And while we may interpret things differently than they did 2,000 plus years ago, the message is the same. We are loved and we have a purpose and a mission to accomplish. And while we lack understanding, again, we are part of that. I am starting to realize that after 21 years of being a minister, that part of my job is to be a storyteller. Part of my job is to say, here is the stories that we connect to. Here are the stories that are important to our community of faith. Here are the stories of our origins, of our beginnings, of what we are supposed to do. And this is why it matters today, living in 2018 in Darke County, Ohio. We have stories to tell and to keep. That is why it is important for us to teach the kids. That is why it is important for us to engage each other, so that we can learn and grow and understand that we are part of this story. Even in the age of division we live in, we are part of a story that still connects us to each other and to God. That each and every one of us, all of our sisters, all of our brothers, all of us, we are invited to be part of something powerful, old, ancient, something that has roots. And I'm starting to understand, again, that there's something enviable about people who have lived their whole life in one location. Now, as a minister, I have moved around a lot. So about the last church I was at, I was there about 9 years, right? And I thought we could be there longer, shorter. I think the average life of a minister in a church is 5 years, which is not very long at all. Because at 9 years in Illinois, Amanda and I were starting to, a taproot kind of appeared, where we started to lay down roots in the connections that you have. And then you find all of these families that have been living in the same homestead for over 100 years, or the community and the people that have roots in the community. And there's something enviable about that, because moving around all of these times, we're not part of that sometimes. You miss the connections. That's why when you go to these big cities like New York or like Portland, where my brother lived, or these places where people move, they form their own families and they lay down their own roots because they still long to be connected to something. I long to be connected to something. And we learn and we grow with each other. But roots matter. Being connected to something that helped shape you into who you are matter. The stories that come before you matter. Even if we change them a little bit, even if we interpret them a little bit differently, the stories are ancient and the same, and we are called to be a part of that story. But again, for me, going back again with this mustard seed and understanding that we see things that aren't always there. In one of the commentaries I was reading, it talks about how, nobody really thinks a mustard seed or a growing seed is going to do much because it's tiny. If you ever seen a little mustard seed. But I did not know this. But if you plant a mustard seed, before long it turns into a bush, which I never knew. But it takes over like a weed. So then I'm thinking, so God's equating God's kingdom to weeds, which none of us like, right? We tear them up. I know I'm in a constant battle every year to rip the weeds out of my yard. Because I know that if I do not rip the weeds out of my yard or kill them, they will take over. Right? There's a new trend now that I just found out about called people are having clover lawns now. Basically, they're just letting the clovers take over, and they mask it under the premise of saying, well, they're pretty. So to me, I just read, we're just too lazy to do our own grass now. Right? So, but clovers, they take over, and there's a lot of them, and they start to connect to each other, and they spread out, and they grow, and they feed off of each other. That is what God is telling us here. We are like these little seeds that, yes, we have faith, and it moves mountains, and we can do tremendous things, but it is worthless unless we connect one to the source. So the seed goes into the soil and connects, and the taproot appears, and it starts to grow and be nourished by the things that have come before it and died and now is nourishing this plant. And then the roots connect to other roots. And before you know it, you have a system. I have these trees that I think Carl and Vonnie planted behind my house when you guys used to live over there, right? And I love it because now I only have to buy a fence for my side yards because they already did the hard work, right? But because nobody keeps up those trees over there, they overgrow into my yard, and all these weeds started. So last week sometime I cut and trimmed all of them, and there was this vine that I started to pull. And I'm not kidding you. If I strung out this one weed that took over, it would stretch probably from that wall to this wall and back. I just kept pulling it, and I felt like it was a magician's trick. It just kept coming. And I'm like, where is this going to end? At one point, I had one end burning in my fire pit and still pulling the other end, right? But it took over. It was big, and it connected to the other parts there, and it was growing with each other. So yes, we want to pull out weeds, but that imagery stands there, that we are like that we can grow and nourish each other and connect to each other, and we become connected in a way that when you rip it out, all of us are connected. And we are connected to a source, to God, that says we are to do bigger things, and we can take over. That little seed that believed, understood, that once it connected to each other and others, it would become bigger than it was. And I wrote this in this poem, and it says, that faith, even the smallest amount, counts. But that little seed that believes, that understands, that once it connects to its source, lays a root, a system, begins to grow, feeding on the remains of old weeds, stories, meanings, digesting them, reaching out, connecting to others, until you, me, us, look, and we are everywhere. Spread, because one seed helped others see the connection and the source of life. That is my vision for this church, that we can all connect to each other, that we all understand that we are called to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. Now, how does this look? I don't know. Why am I excited? Because I don't know. So in the next couple weeks, I have been discerning about putting people on a visioning team that we talked about. And I walked away from the microphone. We talked about the visioning team. So those of you that have contacted me, and then some of you that have not contacted me, but I will contact you in the next few weeks, because I'm hoping that as a team, and I'm hoping that we put people on the team that is a good cross-reference of this church, but it is their job to say, okay, John, you have this vision, how do we make it happen? And then I know all of the questions that come. What are you going to change? I don't know. Nothing, maybe everything. What about Aunt Dorothy's pew that's been there since 1952? Well, I don't know. What about all of the beliefs that have built this church up? I don't know. They're important. I'm not discrediting anything. What I'm saying is I don't have any answers, which is very exciting, because we can think about how to move the church into this new age where the church is changing. We can help people understand that it's not about all of the denominations and all of the things that separate us, but it's about what connects us and makes us who we are, that we are connected to something bigger and to each other, so that we can live out Matthew 25. So that we can live out the greatest commandment. So that we can say, I do not know how we're going to do this, but we're going to do it together. Because we are connected. Because it is important. Because it is life-giving. Because it breathes into us. So as much as we come here on Sunday morning and everybody's like, why am I even here today? I just want to be in bed. It is 90 degrees outside. I shouldn't be outside. Which is very, very valid when you come here, right? But we should leave here and say, I'm glad I showed up because it gave me life. I'm glad I showed up because I could reconnect with the source. I'm glad I showed up because God was there and now I know what I'm supposed to be doing. Or whatever it is, we can come here all tired and worn out, but we should leave knowing that we are part of an ancient story and that we honor it and that we use it. So allow me to read this last part. But it says, I am excited to start a new chapter. A chapter that builds upon the previous, honors it, uses it. This is a journey that may take years, I don't know, but I pray and I ask that you connect with me. That like a seed, growing and learning, holding each other, that we help continue this story. Even the parts that are ugly and hurtful. As ugly as they make us who we are. Good, bad, or indifferent, we learn, heal, build, rebuild, repair, and most of all, we love. So if you will come with me, let's start something new, yet ancient. So let us pray. Lord, as we start to unpack what that means, as we start to journey as a church to a vision that we can be viable within this community and the world, but most of all, that we can be connected to each other and to you, and we can grow. Because you call us to be better. You call us to live a life that loves each other. So Lord, as we begin this journey, wherever we may be, whether or not we wanted to show up here this morning or not, we ask that you can help us be blessed for being here and know that we are a part of this story that is unfolding. That the people that came before us and taught us can be proud with what we will do with it. So be with us as we continue this journey. Be with us as we continue our own journeys. And most of all, help us to be still and to know that you are God. And all of God's people said, amen. If you'll please stand as we close the service.